My team, Leeds United, are back in the Championship. That triumphant rise under Marcelo Bielsa feels like a million years ago now. We finished 9th in our first season in the Premier League after getting promoted with Bielsa. Now look at us, back in the Championship where it all started. We've had a pretty atrocious summer transfer window so far, and the exit of Max Wober today made me want to jump on and talk about just some of the strategies that we've had and some of the players we've let go so far. All in all, we've let players that we signed for over £120 million leave the club for under £5 million. And there's a few different reasons for this, but I'm going to jump into the first one, and that is the loan clauses in some of the contracts. So many of Leeds United's Premier League signings had a clause in their contracts added by former director of football Victor Orta, who is no longer with the club for pretty obvious reasons, I would think, by the end of this video. The clause in the contract allowed them to leave the club on loan, no questions asked, as long as the club receiving the player paid their full wages for the season. So this has led to a pretty mass exodus at Leeds throughout the summer. A lot of their international players and big name players have left the club with very little fee or no fee recouped by Leeds United. And the first one of these I wanted to talk about is Robin Koch. Now, there's a strong chance that we'll never see Robin Koch in a Leeds shirt ever again. He's only got a year left on his contract anyway, and he's left the club on loan. Koch is a German international who's no stranger to big games, having made it into the Germany squad many times. He's joined Frankfurt on loan for the rest of the season, so will actually be playing European football next year in the Europa Conference League. Out of all these loan signings, I'd say Koch is one of the ones that is probably least offensive to Leeds fans. He at least played a few seasons at Leeds. Admittedly, he was part of the squad that took them back to the Championship, playing most of the season at centre-back. So he clearly didn't do an amazing job, but I think the most offensive thing about this is Leeds signed Koch for around £12 million, and he's now left the club effectively on a free. They have recouped a £500,000 loan fee, which isn't a massive amount, and then you would expect him to leave for free at the end of the season. Another player in a similar situation is Diego Llorente. He's managed to get in the Spain squad a number of times. Llorente had a very successful time at Leeds in his first season. Many fans saw him as the best centre-back at the club, from what I remember anyway, when he was playing under Marcelo Bielsa. The next season, things quickly changed. After Bielsa had gone, Llorente dropped down the pecking order a little bit and his performances weren't amazing, which led to him going out on loan last season to Roma under Jose Mourinho, the team which he's actually joined again this year. To be honest, I'm quite surprised that Roma have even opted to sign Llorente again. He had a lot of injury issues while he was there, but they clearly saw something with him and wanted to give him another go. And there is actually an obligation to buy Llorente under certain circumstances. However, this is another player which I'd expect Leeds to lose a fair bit of money for. They paid just under £20 million for Llorente, and the option to buy is rumoured to be sat between £8 and £10 million, so they're not really going to get much of the money back there. Let's move on to a more recent signing in Marc Roca. Roca joined Leeds United in January for around £10 million from Bayern Munich, and actually I remember when he joined there was a lot of hype. He's a central defensive midfielder. We'd been having defensive issues for the majority of the season, so we thought Roca's a player that's going to help the defence out and hopefully be able to put some progressive passing in there and help the midfield out in general. Roca was a player that I was expecting to have a big impact for many seasons to come in Leeds, but he only lasted one in the end. Not even that, 6 months of a season. A £10 million signing who is now being allowed to join Europa League team Real Betis on loan with no fee for the rest of the season. Roca's wages are probably quite high, so it will help us in financial fair play terms, but another core member of the team who's left due to that loan contract stipulation. Now let's move on to the player who at the time was Leeds United's record signing, and that is Brenden Aaronson, the USA international. He's only 22 years old. He's got a lot of potential. I know many Leeds fans will probably hate me for saying this, but I actually didn't hate Aaronson during his time in Leeds. I thought his progressive passing was really good. He was always trying to make forward moves, but it just didn't quite work out a lot of the time. He was quite lightweight in the Premier League, and he clearly got found out after the first 10 games when he looked fantastic. The issue with this is Brenden Aaronson cost Leeds just under £30 million, and he's now been allowed to join Union Berlin on loan for free for the rest of the season. Aronson himself has done fantastically well with this move. Somehow, after scoring 1 goal and getting 3 assists for Leeds in the Premier League last season, he's managed to pick up a loan move to Union Berlin, who finished 4th in the Bundesliga last year. So he'll actually be playing Champions League football, which is pretty crazy after just getting relegated from the Premier League. I'm sure USA international fans will be very happy with that move. However, for Leeds, letting a £30 million signing leave the club with no fee recuperated and leaving a sour taste in many fans' mouths when Aronson still is under contract at Leeds until 2027 seems like a bit of a strange move. He is a player that it wouldn't surprise me if we saw him in a Leeds shirt again at some point, given the fact that the San Francisco 49ers have now bought the club. Obviously, an American company will likely want a bit more of an American influence in the squad if possible. And Aronson is young, so you never know. The second to last player on the list of loanees is Rasmus Christensen. I remember Leeds fans being super excited when Christensen joined just 6 months ago. He was deemed as like a warrior player, someone that's really going to play for the shirt. And Luke Ayling had been having a pretty poor season at right back, so it was a signing that looked like it could change the team and change the defence up quite a lot. After coming in and playing pretty well for a couple of games, Christensen quickly dropped off and dropped out of the starting lineup. A £10 million January signing, which didn't inspire much confidence in the higher-ups at Leeds United, who have since left and no longer own the club, unsurprisingly. Christensen joins teammate Diego Llorente at Roma on loan. I'm surprised again Roma have decided to pick up Christensen given his form at Leeds United and the fact that the only real experience he's had apart from here was playing in Austria. I suppose the level of the Serie A is not quite up to that of the Premier League. For Leeds, it's another £10 million signing that was at the club for just 6 months and won't be there to try help them get back to the Premier League. And the final player on the list of loanees is one I mentioned briefly at the start of this video. January signing, Max Wober. Wober came in and actually had a fantastic time at Leeds. I would say in the second half of the season, he was our best defender. And only a few weeks ago, it looked like he was going to stay with an apparent interview or him apparently saying that he's willing to stay and fight for the club in the Championship. He has now left, so obviously that wasn't the case, and it is a bit of a disappointing one, to be honest, because I thought Wober had a big future at Leeds. To finish things off on this loan section, the worst thing about it is a lot of these players I didn't view as particularly bad players while they were at the club. Rocker, Wober, even Aronson at times, Koch at times, were okay. None of them were world beaters. I just don't see them getting a path back into that Leeds United squad without a lot of hostility from the fans, and I think it'd be a pretty silly move for the owners to try bed any of these players back in, given the fact that they have jumped ship so quickly. I am quite surprised. I think it's given his injury that we haven't seen Tyler Adams leave the club. He was fantastic for Leeds last season, and I do think if he was fully fit, a Premier League team would have come in with quite a large bid, actually. I think West Ham would have been quite a good destination for him. But moving on from these loan signings, I wanted to go on to some of the players that Leeds United have lost on a permanent basis. The first of these is Rodrigo Moreno, the only player really on this list that I think myself and most Leeds fans will be particularly upset that has left. Rodrigo had an immense season for us last year, scoring 15 goals and getting 2 assists. 13 of those goals were in the Premier League as well. He actually managed to outscore players such as Son, Darwin Núñez and James Maddison whilst being in a team that got relegated and were pretty awful throughout the season. Rodrigo only had a year left on his contract, and with that in mind, Leeds only managed to pick up around £3 million for a player who just a few seasons before cost them £28 million. Meaning overall, that's another £25 million loss, and I really wish we could have seen what Rodrigo would have done in the Championship. I think he would have absolutely tore it up, but he was one of our highest paid players, so I appreciate that him staying would have been a huge risk if we didn't bounce straight back up. To be honest, I wish he would have stayed in England or at least played at a higher level. He decided to join a Qatar League team. I can't remember who they are off the top of my head. I do think he still had a lot to offer, and if he would have stayed at a higher level for a season or two, probably would have made it into that Spain Euro squad. Out of all the players on this list, Rodrigo is one of the only ones that I wish all the best. Another 2 players that left Leeds United on permanent deals is Adam Forshaw, who actually his contract just ran out and we decided not to renew it, and Tyler Roberts, who we managed to pick up £400,000 from. Both of these players are ones that were completely riddled with injuries throughout their time at Leeds United. In spells, especially under Marcelo Bielsa, both actually looked really promising and had pretty solid times for a little while. I think Bielsa did that for a lot of the Leeds squad, made them look better than they did under any other manager. Forshaw has been quite unlucky. Towards the end of last season, when he managed to get some regular games in, he did look quite good, but he's not a player you can rely on being a regular central midfield starter throughout a whole season, especially in the Championship when there's even more games. And I think Roberts, to be honest, just needed a fresh start. His time at Leeds had come to an end. He had a few good games every now and then, but wasn't exactly a world beater for the majority of his time here. Another two players who combined cost Leeds United a total of 7.5 million, and they managed to recoup just 400,000 in transfer fees. I think it's becoming pretty obvious that the previous owner's transfer strategy was not up to scratch. Bringing this to a whole rounded total of Leeds United's transfer strategies this season has led to £125 million worth of players leaving the club in one way, shape or form, with only £4.5 million being recuperated, which to me is one of the most astounding losses and failures from a board I've ever seen. Luckily for me, the board has now left. We've got new owners in. There's a new director of football. Victor Orta has left the club. Rad Rizani has left the club. So the 49ers can hopefully have a much better time at Leeds United than Radziani's transfer strategies have led to. A lot of these moves will massively help us with the new financial fair play rules in the Championship. It's just a shame to see a lot of these players who cost us loads of money really wanting to jump ship at the first opportunity, and I don't think most will be welcome back. I know I wouldn't welcome any of the loanees back, to be honest. They can go. I'm happy with that. Let me know in the comments below if you expected Leeds United's transfers to have been quite this bad, and where you think they'll finish in the table this season. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe and all that business. Our socials and stuff will be in the comments, so there'll be shorts on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram and all that stuff. But yeah, thanks for watching. Good night.